Welcome to Mojo Talks. I'm Eric, and for this edition of Context is King, I'm joined as always by Ash. How you doing, Ash?
Very good. We're not dressed alike. It's progress.
You finally gave me your number. So today we're talking about, well, in the past few days, a fair few CEOs and head honchos have come out and not only pointed a finger at Google and Facebook about their dominance, but are calling for investigations, government investigations about monopoly. What's going on?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, and it hasn't been a bunch of unknowns. So CNN boss Jeff Zucker has been one to say, look, maybe if we're looking at fake news and all this stuff about Russia meddling, why not look at Google and Facebook? And then Rupert Murdoch, who's always been, the head honcho over at News Corp, he's basically always said that, Facebook and Google are evil. A few years ago, he was on Google's case. This year, he's saying Facebook should pay them. Which some people say, you're sure you want to rely on Facebook for both your traffic and your revenue? What if they pull the plug, right? But he's out there, sounding the alarm bells. But the one that caught my attention was the New York Times. They wrote an article, The Case Against Google, which...
A long article.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know what to think about that,
Well, what does it all mean?
You remember that Winston Churchill speech, we shall fight in the oceans, we shall never surrender? What do you think of, by the way, when you hear that speech?
Now I think of, well, I think of Gary Oldman, or I think of Dunkirk.
I think of Aces High by Iron Maiden, but that's
nice.
That just tells you my education. It's basically, I think, what they're basically saying is, look, we fought in the marketplace, no dice. We tried to fight in the court of public opinion, close but no cigar. We tried to consider fighting through the legal system, but there's no real argument we could make from a legal sense. So now we're going to kind of take out the boogeyman and say, hey, Mr. Government, maybe you should go look into their affairs. Because frankly, if you go back in history 20 years, the government got involved with Microsoft, and that's when Bill Gates had to kind of step back a little bit, their so-called monopolistic approach to business.
So is this analogous to that?
I think it's like they're saying we've run out of ideas, we've run out of solutions, and you got to bear in mind a couple stats. 85% of digital advertising goes to Google and Facebook in 2016.
Oh my God.
In 2017, that number fell to 67%, but still a hefty amount. A couple of years ago, 99% of the growth in digital advertising went to those two companies. So, look, I think they're running out of ways to counter the dominance of Google and Facebook. What I find a bit alarming and a bit weird is, at the end of the day, these are news organizations, right? I mean, Rupert Murdoch spun off 21st Century Fox, the entertainment division. He is talking as the head of News Corp, a news company. CNN boss Jeff Zucker is no longer the CEO at NBC. He's the CEO of CNN. What aspires to be, a middle of the pack news source. New York Times, they try to be objective and impartial, and if they're coming out writing the case against Google, when at the end of the day, it's competition for time spent on those websites, digital ad dollars and whatnot, I find that particularly a bit, I don't know what to think of that, frankly. And there's very few things I don't know what to think of, but I find that's a bit jarring in that, like, if ultimately you're asking the government to attack your competitor, it's a bit like Donald Trump asking the government to go after Hillary Clinton. It doesn't really smell right.
Well, let's also look at demographics, because CNN, if the typical viewer, I think, is much older, but they're now, coveting the younger viewer. They also, I think, announced that they're doing Great Big Story is going to be 24/7 live, right? Yeah, I mean,
I think they realized the writing on the wall. There's been an acceleration of viewers shifting from TV to online, and they're trying to go after that demographic. But fundamentally, the average demo is a bit too old, and they have to plan for like the next generation. Look, the challenge is that even when these companies are really aggressive, CNN went out and was really big on digital, and then they scaled back. The spoils are still going to Google and Facebook. So the fact that now they're asking the government to look at these companies, that I feel is probably going to backfire in some ways.
Is there a bias in all of this?
Well, I mean, look, there's a bias in everything. WatchMojo has a bias, you could argue, in that we are a large YouTube channel. So if we are to say, hey, this doesn't smell right, somebody could say, oh, well, no wonder you say that, Ash, because your company at the end of the day benefits from YouTube's largesse, right? I mean, we have a large channel. Each month, we make money and they make money from our content, YouTube. But at the same time, I mean, when you've been in business for 13 years, you know, we used to license our content to News Corp. I'm pretty sure there is probably a News Corp 21st century relationship that's still in place. You know, we've had conversations back in the day with New York Times. So I would say we're biased on all sides. So in our case, I think there's a bias when you know, the New York Times gets out there and starts to attack them because they're trying to protect their business. And frankly, Google and Facebook are only getting stronger.
You know, I was listening to the radio this morning, and they were talking about old media versus new media, and I was, in particular, we're based here in Canada, and they were talking about the CBC, and the CBC is the national...
The BBC equivalent.
Right. They get $1 billion in government support every year, compared to, you know, maybe 10 million that go to the smaller independent news and content outlets. So, you know, is there a ground shift happening? Is that $1 billion going to get less and less?
I think you saw it getting less and less north of the border, and that's why when the Liberals won and Trudeau came into office, he kind of slowed that down and said, no, we should fund CBC. I do think what the internet has largely exposed over the last 20 years is it does show that the viewers can vote proverbially with their pocket or remote control or mouse, you know, mice and keyboards. I think online you can't support funding something that doesn't get the attention and viewership and readership. Right. Whereas, you know, a government can justify giving money to a TV channel because it's linear. I think ultimately what the web has exposed is there are three constituencies. There are viewers, there are distribution platforms, and then, like, let's say the portals or like the Facebooks and the Googles, and the Netflixes, and then there are the marketers. And if you have three circles, the common area between those three...
The Venn diagram?
Yeah, pretty much. But the common area between those three is very, very small. And the web exposes that, and that's why long-term it's you know, fly or fail.
Right. So I guess the idea is we want to expand those Venn diagrams?
I don't think so much as you want to expand. It's like the web is like, it's like gravity. You know, it's a bit like there was an entrepreneur, I think, I don't want to misname the entrepreneur, but there was an entrepreneur recently that said fighting Facebook is akin to trying to fight gravity. That's what the web has done. It's democratized. We love the fact that like now media is democratic and everybody can go out there and say stuff. Well, not everybody likes that. But I think you can't have that, you know, hidden hand of the government saying we're going to write a check to support the CBC or the BBC or PBS if the viewership isn't going to be there. It's literally you have to survive through getting attention of viewers.
So content is king, just like content is king.
Oh, yes.
Right. Well, thanks very much, Ash. Thank you, guys. Let us know what you think, and we'll talk to you next time.